Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Conjunct Consulting's first ever Social Impact Day. My name is Benjamin Yeo, and together with my team, we'll be moderating the various components today. We're very excited to explore the various issues with our guest speakers. So without further ado, let's begin the event. So just a quick admin brief before we start the event proper. Firstly, please mute your mics unless otherwise stated. Secondly, do note that the entire event will be recorded and uploaded for future viewing. Thirdly, please submit your questions on Zoom under the Q&A tab and upvote the questions you would like to see answered first. Also, please indicate the panelist name if you would like to address a question to a specific presenter. Just in case you haven't used the Zoom webinar before, the Q&A tab is located right at the bottom. Similarly, if you would like to chat with your fellow participants, please feel free to use the chat function at the bottom and toggle to the respective audience. In the event of any technical issues, please don't be afraid to contact the host or co-host. Also, if Zoom encounters any issues for more than 20 minutes, the room will be cancelled, but feel free to join the other panels. And that's it for the admin brief. So sit back, enjoy, and participate in the discussions. So here's a quick overview of the different events we have in store today. There are three main sections, and we are now at the opening address and keynote speech, following which will be the highly anticipated panel discussions, where you should have already received the Zoom link for the panel that you're allocated to. Lastly, we have a short lunch break, followed by an enabler sharing for those who are keen on the NUS social good landscape, and also what are the other resources available for gone-up initiatives. And with that, let us now begin the opening event with an opening address by Yasmin, the Executive Director of Conjunct Consulting.
Hey, good morning. Thanks, Benjamin. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Conjunct was set up 9 years ago because our founders saw a real need in the social sector to provide services that build capacity and capability. We are a nonprofit helping other nonprofits and social enterprises with cost-effective consulting services. We work with these organizations through our projects and workshops in research, strategy, and implementation to help them do good better. We have now completed more than 250 projects and workshops, helping more than 140 organizations. Through each and every engagement, we have learned that social good organizations are often under pressure to upgrade their capabilities to serve their beneficiaries better. Yet, they are also often working with limited resources, limited funding, limited manpower. With COVID-19 stretching everyone even more, we are heartened to know that our partners have benefited from our services. Boosting their capacity and capability translates to better services, more lives impacted, and a stronger community in the long run. Now, we are able to do so only because of our community of diverse, skilled talent. Working professionals and students come to us with the heart to strengthen social good organizations with their expertise and lots of hard work. And today is another example of how our students make a difference to the social sector. The team at NUS Conjunct Consulting has worked very hard and smart to put this Social Impact Day together. And we are so proud of their thoughtfulness to bring these important conversations to their fellow NUS students and the wider community. We hope that you, our young adults, and the future of our society come forth to work hand in hand to understand the real challenges faced by the social sector, to recognize the good they are doing, and to help them with the best they deserve, just like what our founders did 9 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasmin, for that warm welcome and introduction to Conjunct Consulting. Now, we have Dr. Irene Ng, Associate Professor of Social Work and Director of the Social Service Research Center, NUS, to kickstart our event with a keynote speech. Dr. Irene, please.
Good morning. Sorry, somehow my share screen kicked me out of viewing the Zoom for a while. Is this okay now? Can you all see my screen?
Yep, it's good.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Good morning again. Thank you, NUS Conjunct Consulting, for inviting me to give this opening address on your Social Impact Day. When I was invited, I readily agreed because this reminds me of myself during my undergrad days. That was when I first got to know the world of low-income youth at risk. On most of my free time, I was doing youth at risk outreach in a low-income neighborhood in Lengkok Bahru. We ran a drop-in center, and on weekends we'll be playing sports such as badminton, basketball, street soccer, and doing other outdoor activities such as catching spiders and fishing. Maybe these are the things that youth these days don't do as much anymore, but that was the kind of work we did. And as a result of that, here I am today, a social work professor, and I'm excited at the kinds of things that your group will do together with organizations that want to do good well. And I hope that my sharing will be helpful. My main area of research is on poverty. So I'll start by sharing with you about what I think the poverty and inequality situation in Singapore is. From there, I will discuss what then, where have we progressed and what are the remaining challenges. Then I'll share a framework of response before I summarize. First, poverty. Well, Singapore, we don't have an official poverty line. So I've done my own estimates, right? So really big caveat is just estimation. And the numbers on this slide will be published next month in the snippet of the Social Service Research Center. An earlier version that was published in 2018 is also available. So if you just Google poverty definition Singapore, I think you should find the article. Right. So for this sharing, if you just take my word for it, these are my estimations. Right. First, absolute poverty. This is the most conservative measure of poverty, and it gives the level of income below which someone will not be able to meet very basic needs such as clothing, shelter, and food. Right. And I estimate that in Singapore, about 12% of households are in absolute poverty. Just straight off like this, the number is not trivial. Right? About 1 in 10 will be poor by this measure. And this is comparable to US, which isn't great because US compared to other Western industrialized economies, the poverty level is higher. Right? And in fact, most countries don't measure absolute poverty. Most developed countries don't measure absolute poverty. They measure relative poverty, which is half of median income. What is that? So if you rank all households in Singapore by income from the bottom income to the highest income, the median income household will be the one at the middle, right? And the relative poverty rate is taken from looking at half of that level, right? And my estimation is that about a quarter of households in Singapore might be in relative poverty. Now, OECD reports this measure after taking into account government taxes and transfers. So how do I transform this to something comparable to the OECD rate? If we assume that our welfare system is similar to Hong Kong's, then we can maybe project from Hong Kong. Right? Hong Kong's relative poverty rate before government taxes and transfers is about 20.4%, and after is 14.9%. So which means government taxes and transfers reduce the relative poverty rate by 5.5 percentage points. So if we use that for ours, then Singapore's relative poverty rate can be estimated at 18.5%, which in this next chart is the red line. Yeah? This next chart I've just taken straight from OECD, focusing on the solid circle that gives the relative poverty rates in different countries. And you can see that the red line is higher than most OECD countries and comparable to that of Romania, Korea, and United States. So poverty not a trivial matter in Singapore. Next, inequality. Inequality is often measured using the Gini index, where a higher number means higher inequality. This chart shows you the Gini index that's before government taxes and transfers. So that's called market Gini index by this standardized world income inequality database. I put on this slide illustrative countries that shows a range, like welfare states, Asian countries, as well as countries which are maybe has similar welfare systems as Singapore, such as the US. The first thing to note is that in most countries, income inequality has risen, right? Most of the slopes here are upward. So income inequality is a global problem. Right? Now looking at the comparison between countries, you will see that Singapore's market Gini index isn't high actually. The highest is this darkest blue, which is UK, followed by a lighter blue line, Germany, brown, USA, and then this lightest blue is Sweden, right? Then comes this next one is Hong Kong, then Singapore, the purple line. The lowest are Malaysia, green, and then Taiwan, orange. Right? So doesn't look so bad when we look at before government taxes and transfers, but after that, the picture reverses, where the highest Gini index comes from Malaysia, Hong Kong, then Singapore. Sweden, which is a welfare state that provides large transfers to the bottom earners, is at the bottom now. Right. So this gives you an international perspective. What about through time? I've tracked Singapore's Gini index since independence, and the first thing to note here is the highest point was reached in 2007 when it was almost 50. That's very high. So since then, we've put in more aggressive policy measures such as the workfare income supplement, progressive wage model, and in the last decade, inequality has dropped. And of course, if you take into account government taxes and transfers from the green to the purple line, the Gini index is lower. But if we look at our Gini index historically, we are still rather at a high level compared to, of course, the lowest point in 1978, right? And we can't be too idealistic in today's conditions that we will go back to that level. But still, today's level is higher than all the levels before 2000. Now, you might say that high inequality is okay if all incomes rise, but just that the incomes at the top rise more. Let me show you another measure that I've estimated. The OECD measures low pay incidence as the percentage of workers earning 2/3 of median. So this measures the concentrations of low wages. Right? Again, mine is an estimation, so not totally comparable to the rest. But still, I try to be very conservative. And you can see that Singapore's line, the orange line, is above those countries in this chart. And since 2011, it's been above 30% or around 30%. Right? This is much higher than the OECD average of 16%. And the two countries that are closest to us in this chart are United States and South Korea. So it seems like we have a lot of similarities with these two countries. Now, beyond income inequality, the experience of inequality is social. As our society has matured, our main institutions have stratified. Housing was stratified into different HDB sizes, also landed property, condominiums. Schools were stratified into different schools offering different programs where there has also been numbers that show that the elite schools have more kids coming from wealthier backgrounds. And hospitals are also stratified in terms of the ward types, and that ties to also insurance policy plans. And the workplace too. I think COVID-19 has really revealed the divide between blue-collar and white-collar workers. Right? White-collar workers like myself largely work from home now, but blue-collar workers, a lot of them are essential workers that have to be out there working and be exposed to the virus. So what then? For your Social Impact Day, I'm told that your participants chose these 3 topics for discussion. And I think that these are important intersecting topics. When you view them from intersectionally, we can also think about how some of the disadvantages are cumulative and intersecting. For example, in the intersection between inequality and youth at risk, one key place that we want to look at is schools, right? How are schools structured? How do working class kids experience school compared to middle and upper class kids? Right? There is research from sociology and psychology where it's been shown in different cultures that working class and middle class and above parents have different styles of parenting, and students too from different class backgrounds have different learning styles. And no prize for guessing which style, middle class or working class, do schools prefer, right? Because schools, principals and teachers come from middle class backgrounds. So to us, normative style, the normative way of learning and parenting would be our own, right? So in a way, it's not a fault, but it's just that we don't understand, right? So the higher there is inequality is in society, the less we will understand about how working class families operate. Right? So this speaks to how we need to make more effort to understand how lower income kids learn and how their family environments are. And relatedly is social networks. If our schools are segregating kids by class, then the kids that go to the schools with other rich kids will have very different networks that can give them internships, right? Even future job prospects. That's been shown in research, right? Whereas kids that go to schools where there are more kids that are really from low income backgrounds, then the networks are also in those areas. One more area that I want to highlight is has become crucial because of COVID-19 as well. During the circuit breaker, all students have to do home-based learning. And lo and behold, we discover that, many low-income families, they don't even have a laptop. Or even if they do, the laptop is old, they don't know how to operate it, and they have to share one laptop among the many kids in the family. So there was a scramble to get donations and loans to these families. Right? Going forward, Singapore is going to go digital in a big way. Right? Digital inclusion is now the buzzword. But it's easy to say digital inclusion unless we pay concerted attention in how we bring digital resources to the most disadvantaged among us. They are the ones who have the greatest difficulty being included digitally. And then the intersection between inequality and climate change. We know that poor people tend to be more affected by climate change. In countries where there's urban and rural settings, for example, the rural poor are more exposed to the elements. In an urban setting such as Singapore, again, I think we can draw lessons from COVID-19. This period when I've been working at home, I live in a 5-room HDB flat. Sometimes I just feel like, it's so hot,